Very much for stopping by the Digital Creator Daily. If you're new here, I'm Rob from Hey Summit, and this is the daily-ish show where I get to have some awesome conversations with brilliant people doing very interesting things. We talk about the creator mindset, staying authentic, assembling your toolkit, exploring platforms, and more. It's a pretty relaxed show, as y'all know, about and for creators, thought leaders, and independent entrepreneurs. And just a reminder, the conversation is best when it's shared. So however you're tuning in, feel free to jump in with your thoughts, with your questions, perspectives, whether that's live right now or afterwards on the podcast. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I'm very happy to welcome Judith Germain to the show. Jude is the leading authority on Maverick Leadership and the founder of the Maverick Paradox. She's also an author, consultant, trainer, podcast host, and editor of a business magazine for diverse thinkers. Judith works with business owners to accelerate their impact and influence and attract more revenue. Definitely want to dig into that. She also works with larger organizations to improve the leadership impact of their leaders and enable them to be more inclusive workspaces where diversity of thought is commonplace. Judith also trains organizations on Maverick leadership, strategic thinking, inclusive leadership, and mentors business owners on how to have a business where their core identity attracts clients they want. She's a chartered fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, public speaker, and soon to be radio host. I'm curious about that. Thanks so much for joining me today, Jude.
Hiya.
So much stuff in here, but I guess the first thing that I'd love to start off before kind of digging into your journey from where you started to here is just to set the stage. What is the Maverick leadership model? What is the Maverick leadership philosophy?
Okay, so really good questions. So I've defined Mavericks from 2005 as willfully independent people.
Willfully
with
independent.
The accent on willful, not like a toddler stamping their feet, but as somebody going, yeah, I'm gonna do it. So it's kind of like fun and cheeky. So Maverick leadership is looking at what you do and who you are.
And
that makes sense.
It does. And so in terms of how that came about, you talk about the fact that this way of thinking is something that you not only developed, but it also affected you. It has helped you in a lot of different ways. And you started life not kind of being a thought leader, in your own way. You were working in a corporate environment. So what changed? What allowed you to maybe evolve that kind of mindset? Because the idea of being willfully independent and starting life in a corporate environment, sometimes not necessarily though linked. So how did you go from working in HR, or I guess before then, but for corporates to what you're doing now?
It's a really good question, and it's so true that Mavericks don't do so well in corporate life without a little bit of help. And so I started life at 17 as a commercial underwriter. And I was so fortunate that I had a socialized Maverick manager who allowed me to just keep doing what I thought was right. And it was quite funny because he said to me one day, Jude, I am never going to promote you. And I was 17, so 17.
It's a bit rough.
So I was like, but why? I'm the best person you have. And he said, well, yes, you are, but you just upset people. And I was like, yeah, but I'm really popular. And after a couple of days, they get over it. So what's the problem? And he was like, well, the problem is I'm fed up with it. So I was like, oh. But because I respected him, I actually went and learned how do I do the things I want to do without upsetting and harming people. And that was what started me on that path of leadership. So I want to get somewhere. How do I bring people along in the right way? So I ended up becoming a commercial underwriter with the highest liability limit at an extremely young age, and ended up working in the head office. After a while, I decided I didn't want to do insurance anymore because, like most Mavericks, you become very principled, and I felt like what insurance was about and what was actually doing wasn't right. So I decided to go into HR. And like the Maverick I am, I wrote to the largest retailer at the time and said, you're great, cause, and I'm great, cause, can I have a job? So about a month later, I got a phone call saying, yes, come to the assessment centre. I said, great. Put the phone down and thought, I don't actually know what the job is. So I phoned them back up again and said, I'm coming, but what's the job? And they said, HR manager. I was like, oh, so no HR experience, no HR qualification, going to be head HR manager of 1,000 people in 2 sites. So I was like, okay. So anyway, so I went there. Obviously, I got the job. I was quite maverick by that point. I was 24, and I became the troubleshooter in that organisation. So I used to go around and troubleshoot problems in the different stores. Decided I didn't want to do retail anymore. So I jumped from there into what was a normal corporate. But I'd already had that maverick mindset. So I ended up being the troubleshooter in organisations. So I'd go in, solve the problems, and then get bored when it became steady state. And then I decided, you know what, there are certain types of people I really like working with that no one else can understand. And I realised that they're mavericks. And I also realised that I was a maverick as well, which was a big shock to me because I didn't really think, oh. So I decided to leave and set up on my own. So I went that path with my own maverick mindset, pushing against barriers. I was always the first. So I was like the first woman in this position or the youngest person. Or because mavericks are really good at connecting the dots and seeing how things are connected. So by doing that, you really stand out. And I decided I wanted to make a real difference with the people that were affecting other people. Mm. So I left corporate to work with mavericks and then into Maverick Leadership.
So, I mean, incredibly impressive, just in terms of the journey. But that last part, you kind of glossed over.
Okay, sorry.
No. I just in terms of kind of made it sound so automatic. But like, there is a mindset shift, isn't there? Like in terms of you thinking, you know what, I want to. It's not like, oh no, I'm now here. I'm going to be independently thoughtful, but I want to rise to the ranks. And I really want to kind of build fiefdoms or build alliances. It's clear that, you know, when you're talking about when you were 17 and you got that feedback from your boss, you know, that sense of leadership is being able to put your own feelings aside in order to work with other people. There's a certain amount of like political skill that you need to develop in order to get people to work with you in an effective way. And that is, you know, one of the core aspects of being an effective leader. So clearly that EQ was there, right? That awareness by you was certainly there. I guess I wonder like what would have been like, why weren't you thinking, let me continue doing what I'm doing and fixing problems, but just fixing them in another way in a corporate environment versus saying, you know what, I'm gonna go off on my own. I'm gonna start working with these other people. Was that just so natural to you, or was it? Or was there a prompt or something that happened, or had you always kind of thought, you know what, I don't really want to work for a large company, but this is my opportunity to start doing that?
No, I always thought I'd work in a large organisation. I never thought I'd work for myself.
Amazing.
It's like such a weird idea, but I found that when you become senior manager at a very young age, you end up doing a lot of things very quickly. And there's not much challenge left. So no matter wherever you went, it was the same. For me, it felt like the same old. And I was getting better at it. So whereas it might have taken 4 years, then it was 2 years, then it was 6 months. And it was like you could almost see exactly the plan that needs to take place. But also there was a principle things. The more senior you became, the more you became aware of how the cognitive dissonance between what some organizations said that they were doing and what they were really doing. And it was difficult for me to deal with that dissonance. So I decided that if I really wanted to make a big impact on how business is taking place, I would need to go with those that are making the biggest impact, which were mavericks. So if I felt that if I could help mavericks harness that willful independence to the greater good, it would have a bigger impact than just dealing with one company at a time.
And when you're talking about mavericks, obviously that is this mindset that you're speaking about. Well, when you're off creating your own business, oftentimes, you know, you're debating whether or not who to go after. And so you could be going after Mavericks building their own businesses, working with in corporate environments who identify it as that mindset. How did you go about coming up with who it was that you wanted to speak with, market to, work with the most when you started working for yourself? Or was it pretty much you knew right out the gate?
No, I did. It took a long time.
Yeah.
And it was accidental. So I was in a networking organization and I'd left corporate and I thought, you know, you do what you know. So I was going to be a HR consultant because that made sense. And in this networking organization, every month you met and you had mastermind groups, and I would be in the mastermind groups and I would give business advice. And then one day this guy came up to me and said, I need you to help me with your business, with my business. And I said, okay, that's fine. He said, no, I need you to spend time with me. So I want to pay you. And I was like, oh, because that wasn't my business to give business advice. I was doing HR. I wasn't making any money as a HR consultant, by the way. But anyway, so we had a bit of a conversation and he was my first client. Yeah. And I think I worked with him for probably a couple of years. And it was from the successes of working with him that I was able to draw more people towards me. So yeah, I certainly did not imagine I would be doing what I do now, or even working for myself. And you talked about the Maverick Mindset. So can I explain a little bit about?
Yeah, of course. Please do. Yeah.
So I love acronyms. So I say the Maverick Mindset is an acronym of WINES. So W is willful intention. So Maverick leaders have a willful intention. I'm going to do this thing. So I will do this thing. And if you don't want me to do it, and I think it's a great thing to do, I'm still going to do it. So they're not put off by people not agreeing with them. And H is honest belief. So if I honestly believe this is the right thing to do, then I will do it. And I think sometimes people argue with Mavericks because they don't understand the honest belief that they're moving with. Yeah. I is for influential. So Maverick leaders are very influential people. I've done a bit of a trick there. The N is for knowledgeable. And the knowledge comes from not just being an expert in what you do, but what Maverick leaders do is they say, right, I'm going to be doing, I don't know, I'm going to be a great HR consultant. So what are the things that I need to know? Obviously there's HR, but I might need to know marketing. So I'm going to spend time learning marketing. So what happens is that their knowledge and expertise expands into multiple areas. So they become very knowledgeable. E is for execution, output driven, and S is for success driven. So that's the Maverick mindset, is that they whine and they work for the greater good.
Awesome. So with that though, that mindset, what is nice about it is that it is specific enough to speak to a mindset. It is broad enough in order to be inclusive to a lot of different types of industries, activities, approaches that people want to take in different types of work environments. So when you suddenly had this surprise first client, how did that affect? You said it was by accident. It seemed like you were just doing a really good job, but how did that tell you? What was the lesson that you learned from that experience to say, yeah, maybe not the HR consultant route. Can I see if they're more of like this guy? Or were you finding yourself like fighting against yourself, being like, I'm trying to make this HR consultant thing work, but this guy over here is paying me money. So, you know, how did that work in terms of like finding your place?
Question. The thing was, I didn't really want to be a HR consultant, but I knew I didn't want to be in corporate anymore. And I didn't think I knew anything else. So what I learned is that, and it's what I help with my clients now, is that underneath the function that you say that you do is a whole plethora of skills and things. And what you need to do is to find out what are the component parts of the thing that you want to do, not the function. So a lot of people struggle to attract the right client, and that's because they say the function, I'm a coach, or I'm an accountant, or I'm a web designer, or whatever it is, but that isn't what you do. So I can help people define their core identity. So the core identity is made up of three things, and that's how you are at work, So who you are and how you reflect into work. So you have the first thing, which is the core proposition. So what is it, the thing that you do that sits beneath the marketing message? Because everyone gets a great elevator pitch, and then you ask them and then they don't know what they're talking about. It's really frustrating. So I think that you need to be able to speak a minimum of 20 minutes on your subject. So what is it that you offer? How clear is it to you? Because some people can't sell their thing because they don't know what they do. So how clear is it to you? And how do you narrate it to the potential client so they want to buy from you? So that's the core proposition. And then you have your core impact. So how do I make impact on other people? What are my natural proclivities? Do I like the strategy? Do I like the ideas? Do I like to implement? And then once you know that, you then integrate that back to the core proposition. And then the final thing that makes that core identity is your core talent. So what is it, the thing that's my personal success strategy that I follow all the time? I'm successful, but often I don't know what that is because it's subconscious. So I can't follow it all the time. So you would discover what that is, and then we integrate it back through those other two processes that we've gone through. And then you come up with this proposition that makes your heart sing. And I always say to clients is, if you're doing the thing that makes your heart sing, people want to buy that song because you're so passionate about it, you're so excited about it, but it means something. And it's not just distinctive from a marketing perspective, it's distinctive because it has you in the core thing that you have to offer that is particularly put to the market. So back in the 90s and early 2000s, sounds like it's forever, isn't it? You have your marketing and it's like you find the gap in the market and then you go for the gap in the market. And that's really poor advice now, because it's more about what is it that you want to do? How do you have that core identity? How do you get that out? And then let the market come to you. And that's what makes you successful. That's what attracts the clients. It's that core identity that other people can sing, because nowadays with all the furloughs, redundancies, there are thousands of people doing what you functionally say that you do. And people can choose where they spend their money, and they'll pick the people not just to stand out, but the ones that they like and align to. So go with aligning your business to who you are and what you want to do, and then you'll have no problem attracting people.
I think the fact that if you can lead without authenticity, that's a rare skill that's probably not worth having. But you know, but you know, an effective leader is one that can lead with authenticity, and an effective consultant, effective, you know, entrepreneur, however you want to say it. If you at all are being fake to yourself, or not doing the thing that you are most effective at doing, not necessarily what you are most in love with, but what you know you can do best. If you're not doing that, it means that you're always putting up some sort of mask, and eventually the stresses or the frustrations or just the lack of success will crack that mask anyway. So I think when I'm listening to you, that's certainly what I'm hearing. Just in terms of that authenticity is required, and understanding that as quickly as you can will allow you to attract the right people who are going to be relevant to whatever it is that you're selling, that the product that you're making, or the service that you're offering.
This is about doing the business that you went into business to do, because people get passionate, they see something they want to do, and then they get called to do different things because they need to get paid. And then over time you look back and you're like, who am I? I don't know.
Didn't like that. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. I don't like what I'm doing, but I don't know how to do something else because I don't know what that something else is. And I think people have a strange idea when it comes to business. I think we all think we're Coca-Cola or Apple or something like that, and try to market in the same way. And it makes it sound like it's not just marketing. It's about running the business. You can't run yourself as a corporate unless you're a corporate.
Exactly. And speaking of kind of marketing and running the business, what were there times at which you tried certain tactics, certain approaches, or what have you, that just didn't work? And if so, you get too many, I imagine. But yeah, and why didn't they work, and what did you learn from them?
So one of them was cold calling. Now I've been trained by, I would say, the best cold callers, trainers in the industry. Still couldn't do it. And what I realized was I knew that I didn't like being cold called, whether I was in corporate or otherwise. And the people that I work with are similar to me. So subconsciously, I knew it wasn't going to work. I would just upset the Maverick people, the Maverick leaders I wanted to work with. So I wasn't doing it, but I was also beating myself up for not doing it. So I looked at what the key principles were and applied them to a way of marketing and farming that fitted me. So I used the core concepts, but not the whole thing. And I think that's one of the things I've learned in business. You don't have to take something whole. You can break it up and then just use the parts that are going to work. And if it doesn't feel right for you, it's not right for you.
I think that's a really interesting approach. And I think it kind of jives with a lot of what we hear, at least when I speak with a lot of people. It's, you don't have to be everywhere. In fact, you shouldn't be everywhere. and if you're feeling a bit of FOMO because you're not on a particular platform or doing a particular thing, that's all in there. It's not actually doing anything for your business. So I think that's a really nice kind of addendum to that, or combination of that. In terms of or speaking of kind of marketing approaches or products, you wrote a book. But there was, in addition to all the other stuff that you do, but there's, I think, an interesting story about why you wrote that book. Could you kind of talk a little bit about what made you want to write it, and why, from a business and perhaps a marketing perspective, you thought about it in a bit of a different way?
Yeah, because I took some time out of the business. And then when I decided I wanted to come back into business, things had moved on. So I was used to being well known for what I was doing, to people saying, Judith who? Yeah. So I thought,
it's rough.
It was rough. It was really rough, actually. It was a horrible time, because I also had that cognitive dissonance of knowing I wanted to do something around Maverick leadership, but not knowing what. And I didn't want to do what I was doing before, something new, but what? So I thought, if I wrote a book that positioned my thoughts on Maverick leadership, or Maverick specifically, that book was on, and what lied behind Maverick leadership, I could use that book as an authoritative piece to be used as probably a big business card. So I didn't write the book as a way of making a ton of money from the book, although the book obviously sells. I was using it more of a saying, like, I'm authority in this subject, and I used that to pivot. So the book's called The Maverick Paradox: The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders, and I was able to work with business owners and large organizations, by referencing the fact I've written the book, taking out key concepts and marketing those concepts. And it enabled me to be in newspapers, and people to call me, go on interviews based on the book. So it was a great way to accelerate myself as an authority, because people, like I say to my clients now, people are only buying thought leaders because there's so many other people who aren't. So you have to, like a Maverick, I said, you have to make a decision as to what you want to be known of, make a strategy towards it, and then implement that strategy.
I think a whole lot of people think, well, when I have an audience, it'll be easy. When I have an audience, I can do this. And if you're reading about like marketing tactics, everyone's like, well, if you have a 50,000 person email list, you do this, that, and the other thing, and then you're making money. Or you build your course and you sell it to your 50,000 person email list, and you're good. And it's like, well, great, but how the hell do I get to the, build the audience in the first place? And I think that there are some, people actually don't want to plug, obviously. People use summits for that entire reason. They're building authority when they don't necessarily have it initially, or they're entering a new space or entering a new kind of way around it. And the idea that you use the book as that kind of authority driving kind of product, it sounds like it was really effective, but it also sounds like, at least in the words of modern content marketing, you were able to repurpose that content and harness that content in a whole bunch of different ways, rather than just you saying, "Oh, maybe I should write a book. It sounds like a good thing to do." It seems like there was quite a thoughtful and planned
There was a clear
approach.
strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was able to go to the places that I'd been in before and go to the editors and say, I don't know if you remember me, but I've just written the book, and that kind of stuff. Or I spoke at your event a couple of years ago. I've got a book. So that enabled people to, I guess, if you leave enough breadcrumbs and you are consistent for what you stand for and what you believe and what you're passionate in, people want to buy into that. Yeah. And even though I pivoted so I went from dealing with Maverick entrepreneurs almost solely into Maverick Leadership, most people don't see it as a pivot. Because obviously I still deal with the entrepreneurs, but it's more of a case of I planned for it to be retrofitted. A bit like, you get iOS 14, but you still work on iOS 13 machines. I made a decision that when I was going to pivot, it would be backwards compliant.
It's an evolution and an expansion, not closing one door and opening another one, maybe. Well, but I mean, learning from your challenges, learning from your things that didn't work. How do you? I think one of the common things that I find with talking with people, at least on the show, is there is a mindset difference between people who are trying to build something themselves rather than building something for someone else or as part of a larger company. And that is their approach to failure. And I know everybody's like, celebrate failure and all this stuff that I think gets a little bit overdone, but because failure can be brutal, and it's not just failure. Crap, that didn't work. Oh well, on to the next thing. That could be the difference between you making that sale or not making that sale. So how do you view failure, and like, how do you harness that in order to propel yourself forward?
Okay. Well, I see failure as a stepping stone to success. And if you fail, that isn't a reflection on me, on my identity. It just didn't work. And also, I very much firmly believe in strategizing, innovating, and executing. So in the strategy of what you're doing, you're considering the failure point. So you might start off in the strategy and the risk of failure is really high. So you go back and you keep running the strategize, innovate, execute in your head, in your planning, until you reach the point where if something fails, you can walk away from it. It's going to be okay. So you're kind of de-risking it. So if then you do fail, you're like, I thought that might happen. But it's not, it's not like you don't get upset, because you do. And you might take a couple of days to go, I really needed that sale. But then you go, okay, fine. What did I learn from that? Let's move on. Because you can't afford to live in failure. You just can't. You just have to. And as I say to people, no great person has ever got anywhere without failing. And if they've never failed, that when they do, it's going to be massive.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, Or the worst thing is they probably have, but they haven't been aware of it. And then that could be crushing.
About it
either. Yeah, absolutely. I think not being afford to live in failure. I think that's a great line. And I think that's something that everyone can not only try and incorporate, but it's also it's critical. If you do live in failure, you're your own worst enemy out of everything in the first place. Speaking of being your own worst enemy, you obviously, when you go off on your own, it can be sometimes quite a lonely process. You're it, or if you have a team, they are your team. You are responsible for everything. How have you kind of worked with and either embraced or dealt with kind of the loneliness that sometimes comes with going off on your own?
I think that's such a point, because it is lonely.
Yeah.
If you're used to being around a lot of people who all have a common purpose, and then you are defining your purpose, it's kind of scary. And I think one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make is that they surround themselves with their employed friends who are often more risk averse than you are.
Yeah.
So a lot of dreams are destroyed before they even get a chance to lift off. So it's not about dumping those friends, but being aware of where they sit.
That'll never work because I can't see how it'll work. That'll never work.
Or, whatever, it doesn't matter who your friends are or how much they get paid, but when they distill their money to an hourly rate, whatever you're charging is going to be higher than that, even if they're really highly paid, because your hourly rate includes so much other stuff. So they're like, oh, you can't charge people that. That's just bad. You can't charge them more than like £50 an hour, and that's not going to work. So I think it's surrounding yourself with mentors. It doesn't have to be formally like someone like me, but it could be just, I have a group of Mavericks that I go to for different things.
Yeah.
And I go to them because if I'm talking rubbish, they'll tell me. But if I've got some wild idea, that because they're like-minded, they can see it and go, that sounds really great, but remember to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So I think we have to remember that we are whoever the most 5 people surround ourselves with. So if you want to not to be lonely, don't be around 5 people who are really negative. Find 5 people who aren't. And I think when you go networking and you go into groups, is find the people that you are like-minded, who have similar goals and mindsets to you, and spend time with them.
That's awesome. That's a great point to end on. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Jude, for taking the time to chat with me today. If anyone wants to find out more about Jude, you can connect with her. Although write out Judith on LinkedIn and YouTube. You can just search for the name Judith Germain, and then on Instagram as Maverick_paradox. Her website is maverickparadox.co.uk, and the magazine is the maverickparadox.com, all one word. Thank you again, Jude, for taking the time.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.